Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Eichhoff Art Podcast. The Eichhoff Podcast. I'm Alex Eichhoff. And today we are talking about a little bit of a sensitive subject, something that may be triggering for some people. I'm going to talk about my opinions on the topic of health and how important personal health is to a creative entrepreneur of any kind, whether you're an artist, a writer, a designer, a performer. Um, it is very important, in my opinion, to maintain a balance across all aspects of health. And I do want to give a disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a nutritional scientist. I'm not an exercise scientist. I'm not qualified really at all to talk about health related subjects, but I do have a lot of personal experience with my own health issues and autoimmune conditions, and I've been on a really long health journey of self discovery and lab testing and experimentations with diet and exercise in all of the subcategories that we're going to talk about today. And it seems like the older I get and the more artists that I meet and talk with about their creative process and their lifestyle, it seems like it's a common trend for artists of all kinds to have health struggles. I'm part of an artist co-op group that meets once a week, and we have a small group. And obviously, I don't want to give away any personal information, and I won't be specific to even name the organization. But in my small group, there's 5 artists, and 4 out of the 5 discussed having some sort of chronic illness that they are battling with, and it's something that we talk about on almost a weekly basis about how that struggle has impacted not only our work but our personal lives and even our business lives. So, yeah, let's just get right into it. I'm super passionate about health because of my own personal journey. I'm going to get to that here in just a minute, but I want to outline the aspects of health that I'm mostly going to be discussing. And I got this from Incher Huberman, I believe. He's a neuroscientist and professor at the University of Stanford. He has his own podcast and lab, the Huberman Lab podcast. And he discusses the 4 pillars of health, which are sleep, nutrition, exercise, and social connection. I believe that's right. Maybe I am not getting it super correctly. I'm just going off of my memory, and I didn't really do direct research to prepare for this. I just kind of like word vomited on my notebook about some things that I wanted to talk about. So, once again, don't take this as my advice or instruction. I'm not making suggestions beyond my own novice opinion, which is based on my personal experiment or experience, kind of experimentation, which is just at the end of the day, not much better than epidemiological studies or anecdotal evidence. Please consult with an actual doctor if you're suffering some serious illness. Don't mistake this podcast for actual medical advice. But I am going to express my opinions, and they are somewhat controversial, especially when we get into nutrition. And it's not exactly in line with conventional wisdom or common narrative in society, what we've been told by our doctors, by our health class teachers, even recommendations by government-backed industries, or not, I'm sorry, not government-backed, but like organizations such as the FDA, the CDC, American Heart Association, all of these national organizations that do influence what is taught, what is recommended by um, federal agencies, such as the government. So let's talk about these. I'll just kind of go in order. Um, I do want to give kind of like a brief statement that I think is kind of unfortunate. This is going to be kind of a critique. I'm going to try my best not to seem super negative throughout this podcast, but unfortunately, I think that there is a lot to critique about not only the health system in the US. Obviously, it's better than some other countries, especially like third world countries, just because we have access to pretty decent health interventions, especially when it comes to like surgery and stuff like that. Just like the access that we have. I'm not going to get into the politics too much. I do want to make this more about an individual and how I can help maybe encourage artists and creative entrepreneurs to take what they can into their own hands to control what you can, because I do believe that a lot of the aspects of our health are in our control. That being said, it's not easy, and I do want to highlight that everything that I'm going to talk about shouldn't be discrediting suffering of individuals. I don't want to make light of suffering. I myself have suffered a lot from chronic illness, and I'm not trying to write that off and make it sound like these health suggestions or critiques are easy to adopt and implement beneficial practices that are more productive for our creative lifestyles. But I do want to be real about it and not perpetuate lies that are told to us about our individual health, such as most chronic disease is not genetic. Okay, that's hard for a lot of people to hear and to accept. But a lot of chronic illnesses, probably somewhere around 80% of all chronic illness, is environmental, which means that it can be changed. And this should be a good thing. It's a good thing for anybody who has internal locus of control. If you have external locus of control and you think that your conditions in life are determined by an external force, you're not going to like that theory. You might be like, no, my chronic illness is genetic. There's nothing I can do. I just have to submit to that higher power, and I'm doomed. I'm destined to be fat. I'm destined to be weak. I'm destined to be inflamed and volatile. I don't believe that. I do believe that genetics play a role for sure in your physical, mental, spiritual condition. I think that is part of the equation. I don't think it's as much of the equation as common narrative makes it seem to be. I'm making generalizations here. Obviously, there's a spectrum across the board on all aspects of life, especially health. But I do want to say that is my belief, and I'm operating based on that fact. You can look it up. I mean, even these organizations like the CDC will admit to that. And I just don't like the victim mindset that is kind of dominating culture nowadays, kind of glorifying suffering and glorifying oppression and being disadvantaged. I think that that mindset is more harmful than it is good for individuals. And I don't want to perpetuate this idea that you are bound to your chronic illness. I think whatever you are suffering from, there is at least a more relieving path for you to pursue. And I want to encourage that. I think that anybody that perpetuates that mindset of like you're doomed to suffer, your chronic disease is your destiny, that's unethical and unhelpful, and I don't like that narrative. So, that being said, seeking relief and finding relief is not easy. It's a steep mountain to climb. I know this from my own journey. But the truth of the matter is, the harsh reality is, you don't get to choose no difficulty at all. Life is going to be hard whether you choose to continue suffering from your illness or you choose to live a lifestyle that can provide you some relief but is also a very hard lifestyle to follow. You get to choose your heart, but that's the only choice you have. So for me, it's constantly choosing the path that provides me the most relief for my chronic illness symptoms. Let me just talk about my symptoms and what I'm dealing with. So, for the past like 5 years or so, I've been struggling with my health, fatigue, chronic constipation. We're getting TMI, deal with it. Um, I have bouts of frequent urination. I would get up in the middle of the night and have to pee multiple times throughout the night. Even after I pee, I still feel like I have to pee. I went through a series of testing and a kind of a rigorous health protocol at the Epigenetics Healing Center here in Kansas City, Missouri. Um, and I don't want to bash them too much, but I spent a year following the protocol of the doctors there, and I found some relief, but not what I was looking for, especially for the amount of money and time that I spent and stress that I endured while following the procedure and taking all the supplements. I invested quite a bit of money, maybe about $10,000 throughout a year to try and find relief from my symptoms. Oh, I also had some abdominal pain, um, kind of around my gallbladder and liver. So I did a bunch of tests, a bunch of blood work, urine samples, saliva swabbing, and found out that I had a bunch of different food allergies, had a bunch of different inflammation numbers. I was quote unquote diagnosed. They don't really diagnose at the Epigenetics Center. It's more just reading your lab results and what they indicate, um, because they're not about giving diagnostics, because they believe in this whole environmental and lifestyle remedy for chronic illnesses. So it's kind of like if you diagnose somebody with a specific illness, then it feeds into that inverse mindset of like, this is my identity, my illness is my identity, whatever. Um, so I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, autoimmune hypothyroid. I think that's called Hashimoto's. It sounds similar to that. Basically, I was having trouble converting T4 to T3, and my thyroid panel was just super low. Like all my numbers were just very low, which made sense for the symptoms that I was experiencing, especially fatigue, especially the constipation, chronic constipation. I was seriously constipated for like 2 to 3 years, only going number two like once or twice a week. And when that happened, it would take 30 minutes at a time to sit on the toilet and just relax my body. And what was coming out was like stones. I'm talking like dense, really hard poops that were like fucking rocks. They were smooth. They weren't like rough rocks, but they were like stones. That's the only way I can describe it. And it was like an effort to get them out. And basically, I could just like feel all the food digesting and going through my colon. So it was no matter what I ate. And unfortunately, with this healing center, his kind of his protocol was I don't want to say the guy's name, but it rhymes with Schmudbinder, Dr. Schmudbinder. And his protocol was very plant-based diet, and it's basically paleo diet. It's like a strict paleo diet, avoiding the food intolerances that you have histamine responses to that I found out via the food allergy test. So avoiding all those, avoiding common allergen foods such as grains, which especially gluten-containing grains, dairy, eggs, um, what else? Soy. I think there's others, but those are like some of the major like food allergens that people have. Even though they weren't coming up, the only one that came up on my food test was egg whites. There's a protein in egg whites that's really susceptible for people to have inflammatory responses for. So anyway, that's getting too much into the weeds. I got off coffee. I dramatically cut back and went off weed for a while. No alcohol. I've talked about this in previous podcasts about drugs that I've done. I've been sober off alcohol for about 2 years. So I was off all of that during this period of time. It was about a year that I was with this program, and I was very strict. No sugar, no processed foods whatsoever. So I kicked a lot of the toxins out of my diet. And on top of that, I was doing a ton of supplementation that was specifically geared towards the metrics that were discovered in my lab test, my thorough lab testing. So it was very rigorous. It was very designed to me specifically, um, and it was tough. Basically, he was recommending that I had 7 to 10 cups of vegetables a day, and most of my diet was surrounding vegetables. It was a very low carb diet, and it was honestly a pretty low fat diet. Although I was consuming some healthy fats via avocados, some nuts, olive oil, maybe even a little bit of coconut oil. Um, so I was doing a lot of smoothies, a lot of fresh organic vegetables, a little bit of fruit, like max 2 servings of fruit a day to keep the carbs low. And there's a lot of brilliant aspects of this diet that I was following. Um, However, like just being whole food, I think is a massive step up from American standard diet of processed foods, refined sugars and carbohydrates. Um, Seed oils is a big one that I've discovered is just detrimental to health. And then obviously stuff like alcohol and even coffee, which can be prone to having mycotoxins, mold issues with that. So I was cutting out a lot of bad stuff and I was eating a lot of quote unquote good stuff. But I think this is leading to one of the common misconceptions that I do want to talk about, is that the good foods that are vegetables and plant based foods, I think, is subjective. It's not universally good for everyone. Better than foods that you find in a box, better than breakfast cereals, yes. But vegetables have an insane amount of fiber, and there are plant toxins, anti nutrients such as lectins, phytates, oxalates. These are things that disrupt the gut lining and make it hard to digest food. Fiber is impossible to digest for humans. We don't have the gastric capability of actually breaking down the fiber. So a lot of people say that fiber helps you poop because it adds bulk to your stool. So if you deal with IBS, maybe this is the case if you have soft or runny poo. But if you're like me and you're pooping cement stones, fiber made it worse. My symptoms of chronic constipation got immensely worse. I had extraordinary digestive pain when I was eating all these vegetables. Bloat was off the chain. My toots were diabolical, like horrific smelling, could kill somebody. It was bad. You can ask my partner. It was bad, and it was constant. I was farting, ripping ass all day long. It was painful poops, painful toots. It was very uncomfortable eating this many plants. So I got desperate at the end of this year. Not this year. This was back in like 2022, I believe. Um, which ironically was like my best financial year. I made a bunch of money off of my art and doing murals, even though I was dealing with all this chronic pain. It was kind of ironic, unrelated. I think it was just I was getting lucky and blessed with a lot of opportunity that year, and I was hustling. I was really hustling. Um, but I'm getting off track. I'm only telling my experience because I think that I'm a pretty good example of living outside of the status quo because you hear all this pushing for plant-based diets. And listen, I'm not trying to hate on vegetables. I just said it had a bunch of there's a lot of vegetables that are prone to anti-nutrients, which I don't want to get into in this video. Maybe I'll do another discussion about these specifically, but I don't really want to be like an influencer on nutrition. I'm just explaining it because I want you to question everything. I want you to not go with the status quo. We are artists, and therefore we are innately countercultural. So if the common narrative is you should go more towards plant based, don't challenge it just to be a contrarian, but like follow the money. Whoever is telling you that, look at what influences or who they might be sponsored by. I think that there's a lot of propaganda in the plant based industry. They're trying to demonize um, meat based foods and trying to prop up these Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat, whatever these companies are. And those are for profit. So that's a tangent. There's conspiracies to go with what I'm saying, and you might think that I'm crazy, but I'm telling you my personal experience. I dropped all the toxic foods, was eating a super strict paleo diet, mostly vegetables, and although some symptoms did improve, I was technically diagnosed with pre-diabetes. My insulin markers were that of which were considered pre-diabetic whenever I originally got tested, and I did reverse that through this diet because I cut refined carbs and sugar completely. My insulin resistance improved, and that's not nothing. That's significant, I think, and that's the benefit of eating whole foods and avoiding sugar. Um, so if you take anything away from what I just said the past 5 minutes about the plant-based diet, the paleo, the benefit is avoiding bad foods that your body doesn't do well with, such as sugar, seed oils, grains, even, which are is crazy. And this is why I'm going to talk shit on these organizations that the government is in connection with, like the FDA, who put out the food pyramid. I mean, you guys know the food pyramid. You can picture it, right? You have the biggest section on the bottom, it's grains, and then you have vegetables and fruits, then you have a little bit of meat, a little bit of dairy, and then on top of the food pyramid is like sweets, treats, desserts, refined sugars. And that doesn't belong on the food pyramid. No government should be advising that we have any desserts. I'm not shaming people. You get your ice cream. I like to eat pancakes once every couple of months. You'll catch me at Betty Ray's on Warnall in Waldo getting some novel ice cream every once in a while. I'm not trying to hate on that. I'm just saying it doesn't belong in our standard diet of everyday nutrition. It shouldn't be advised at all. And what I've learned about grains and the dangers that they pose for our gut integrity, and just how fiber is not absolutely good. For somebody like me, no fiber is best. I have actually switched to an even more strict paleo diet in the sense that I mostly eat carnivore. I would say that 90% of my food comes from grass-fed pastured beef. I also eat eggs, whole eggs with the yolk. I also will occasionally have some raw dairy, some like raw Parmesan. And occasionally I'll do some fermented veg. I'll do some sauerkraut. I'm actually making my own sauerkraut right now, which actually eliminates a lot of the plant toxins and allows me to digest these foods and benefit from the phytonutrients and the good probiotics and prebiotics that are in fermented foods. So I'm only telling you this because I have experienced extreme relief. My chronic constipation, gone. I poop almost every day. Although, if you know anything about food assimilation, the rate at which the food that you consume is absorbed into your body is assimilation. Meat Animal products have the highest rate of assimilation, which means if I eat 2 pounds of meat in a day, which is close to what I eat for my 150-pound frame, you're not going to poop out 2 pounds of food. Whereas if you eat 2 pounds of vegetables in a day, you're going to probably poop out a similar quantity because high fiber foods have the lowest amount of assimilation. Remember, I said that you don't process fiber in your body. You literally can't break it down. Whatever fiber comes into your body, you literally poop that out. We can't digest it. Look this stuff up. Please fact check me. I'm okay to be wrong. I'm not claiming to be some scientist, okay? I'm telling you my experience, and I've read studies that have indicated that not only we do not need fiber, there is a significant portion of the population that doesn't do well with fiber. I'm not talking about low fiber, I'm talking about no fiber. That's me. I'm one of them. I cured my 3-year chronic constipation by eliminating fiber altogether. Do you hear me? No fiber. But what about fiber? It's so good. I'm telling you, I don't give a fuck about those recommendations. It's not good for me. Okay? Another common misconception is that saturated fat is bad. Cholesterol in your diet is bad. There's a lot of bullshit epidemiological studies that have corrupt profit incentives behind them that make you think that consuming a lot of cholesterol in your diet leads to plaque buildup in your coronary arteries. This is weak science, and I don't want to argue about that here, but I'm telling you that most of the energy that I get from my food is via saturated fat from animal products. Very high cholesterol. My cholesterol level is slightly elevated based on the recommendations, and I haven't had a blood test in over a year, so it's about time I get one. And I recommend that you get blood work done too. This is going on way too long. It's been 27 minutes in this podcast. I haven't even talked about how this relates to art. This is a tangent. See how I get? I'm very passionate about this shit. So maybe we should hop off of this nutrition. I'm not telling you to eat carnivore. I'm not telling you to eat plant-based. I'm telling you, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as a creative, the impact of nutrition on your health is not to be understated. I think it's really underestimated. We talk about all these fad diets. We talk about all these snake oils and these quick fix pills. All I want to say is that you can improve your health significantly through your diet. It's very important, and I think that you should at least do some experimentation with your own diet. If you're unhappy with your health, try and push more towards whole foods. I know it's seemingly more expensive, but you're paying for it either way. You're either going to pay for it by paying the farmers at your local farmer's market by getting fresh produce, or paying your beef farmer to get grass-fed beef from your local farm, and you're supporting local industry, or you're going to pay your doctors when you visit just so they can prescribe you overpriced medications. I digress. Nutrition is very important. I don't think that I can state this enough. I've obviously spent already a half an hour ranting about diet, but it massively impacts your energy levels, your ability to create, especially I'm a muralist. My job is very physical, so I need to have energy levels. Fatigue from hypothyroidism is unacceptable for my work. I have to be compassionate towards myself and have grace for my body, but that involves not putting bullshit into my body so that it gets bogged down, so that I have to take a nap. That's not an option for me most days. So it's crucial. I think the impact that your physical health has on your mental health as well is something that is not to be overlooked. And diet plays into that as well. The foods that you put into your body can affect the proclivity for anxiety and depression. Again, most people I know suffer from anxiety or depression. There are fewer people in my life that don't have those, diagnosed or other. I see it. I know it's not a secret. You're not special for being anxious or being depressed. I'm sorry. Everybody deals with it anymore. It's 2024. It's common. You think I'm wrong? I'm not being harsh. I'm not belittling people that suffer from that. I'm one of them. Please know that I'm not saying that this is your fault. But what if it is something you can control? What if you can reduce the symptoms through your diet, not eating inflammatory foods, not consuming sugar that is going to spike your anxiety, make you jittery, nervous? What if? I'm just saying, isn't it worth a shot? Do you want to be on meds for the rest of your life? I don't. So I'm trying to take matters into my own hands and control what I can. Exercise, another pillar of health. We talked about nutrition. Let's get into exercise. Exercise is not an option for me. And I don't think it is for anybody. If you are sedentary, if you're a painter, an illustrator, you're spending a lot of time on your computer, on your drawing pad, at the easel. I can't express how important moving your body, getting energy to flow through your body is. For mental health, it's proven that vigorous exercise on a regular basis, we're talking 3 times a week, folks, maybe an hour to 2 hours a week of exercise. Whether this is long walks, going on a run, lifting weights, possibly the best thing you can do for your mental health. 3 times more effective in reducing mood disorders than SSRIs. That's a fucking fact. Look it up. Vigorous exercise. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. But if you develop the habit and you put it in your routine, it becomes easier. The more you do it, the more you'll want to do it. If you're working from nothing, if you're morbidly obese and you're sedentary and you feel stuck, I'm not saying you need to go out and just start pumping iron and go hard day one. You got to ease into it. You got to do a sustainable exercise routine. Try and do something that will get you the next step. Don't go out and walk 5 miles your first day. Go out and walk around the block. That's something. Take a step in the right direction. And this is all of this. I'm not saying cold turkey, quit all the drugs in your life, quit sugar, quit fucking carbs, all this stuff. I'm saying if you orient yourself into the right direction and make the commitment to be healthier, that's good. Try and build on that. Don't just accept one little walk around the block as like your forever routine. We're working towards being able to lift those weights, lift something heavy, do some resistance training. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. These are all connected. Your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, they are inseparable. Your body is an instrument with which you use, your mind, your brain is a part of your body. So taking care of your body through nutrition and exercise and sleep, which we'll get to in a minute, is going to allow your brain and your cognitive function to operate properly. And then that cognitive ability is also part of your access to a spiritual experience, which I believe is innate in all human beings. Consciousness is an aspect of spirituality. And the more illness you have, the more roadblocks you have in that spiritual connection, that pathway. So being healthy is important for connection to greater powers. And this is including the artistic process, because as much as you want to hone your skills and that you should do that, and as much as you are confident in your own artistic abilities, there is a third element. There is a sixth sense that is involved in creating good art, I believe, and that comes from something divine. There are muses that are sentient beings among us that manifest themselves through our work. And if you want to be an open receptacle for those things, you have to maintain a balanced health regime so that your body and your mind can be fine-tuned antennas for that spiritual access. that's super heady. I could have a whole podcast on that alone. But I think that might be even maybe the thesis of what I'm trying to get at here in talking about nutrition and exercise and sleep and social connection, these pillars of health, that um, is essential for the life of an artist. Whatever your medium is, whatever you're trying to do with your art, whether you're trying to be a visionary artist or whether you're just trying to be a commercial artist, whatever. I think that your capacity to create is directly linked to your health and the balance across all these pillars of health. So exercise is super crucial. I need it for my mental health more than my physical health. Sure, I like having a strong body. I like looking good when I take my shirt off. It's a confidence thing. I like having good posture. I like being able to function physically. I need it when I'm painting these big murals. I'm jumping up and down ladders. It's a very physical thing. I need to lift heavy weights and train my body in order to function properly in my career. I'm making most of my money from murals. So I need to be able to hop up and down off of a lift. I need to be able to move my body and shoulder when I'm spraying or rolling and lifting heavy paint buckets, stuff like that, scraping walls. It's important. I'm standing all day. I'm walking around, walking, 20, 30,000 steps a day when I'm on these big walls. So it's very important to be physically fit. I need to train for such activity. But also my mental health, to escape anxiety. I need to exercise at least 3 or 4 times a week. And on those off days, even, I like to go on a walk to get my body moving, to get the blood flowing. Otherwise, I have a tendency to get depressed. I have a tendency to be more anxious and irritable and have almost like bipolar tendencies if I don't exercise. And I notice it even within like a week after not exercising. I will notice that these symptoms start to creep in, and I do not like that. I do not like that at all. So it's super important. It's crucial. If you don't exercise at all and you suffer from these conditions, I urge you to at least try. Start small, be sustainable in your practice. And if you don't know how to do it and you don't know where to start, there's so many videos on YouTube. And maybe drop a comment below and I will post some links of where you can get good information on proper fitness regimes and routines. Keep it simple, make it frictionless. Um, yeah, and that's all I really want to say about exercise. Maybe I will talk more about that if you show interest in the comments below, but I can't express how. It's not an option. It's not an option for me, and I don't think it should be an option for you to just not exercise. I think something, and I'm going to talk about this when we come to sleep, which I'll do next. There's like a almost trend or glorification or fad in the art lifestyle to like, it's almost like fun to forsake or sacrifice our health. As an artist, like we tend to, I hear a lot of artists talk about like indulgences and hedonic pleasures, and it's because we're like sensitive people, right? Like we see the beauty, and pleasure is just part of our makeup. I think it's for all humans, but especially artists, because we're so sensitive. We like the simple pleasures in life, like going out after a long day in the studio and getting a burger or a milkshake or whatever your vice is there. Or even like doing drugs, binging on drugs, whether it's alcohol, weed, cocaine, Adderall, caffeine, coffee, just like to drink a lot of coffee, and we use our practice as an excuse to do those things. And like, I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm just saying like moderation is key, and don't let this kind of dogmatic narrative around being an artist and being a suffering soul get the best of you. Like, do you really want to be Basquiat? Do you really want to die young and be heralded as this like tortured artist? I don't know, man. I'm in it for the long game. Like, I want to be here to spend time with my kids and my grandkids and live a long life where I can be painting murals forever and evolving my skill across generations and decades and see how that growth evolves. So health is really important to me. I think it's a really big disservice to us as artists to pay into that narrative of like the tortured artist and using that as an excuse to indulge in hedonic pleasures. And I think it would do us better to focus on meaningful endeavors and focus on our health and longevity. Um, it's all a balance, right? There's a spectrum to that. There's going too far and stressing out about it, and I'm definitely a culprit of that. I've been there. I've been too focused, hyper focused on my health to where it's taken away from my creativity. Maybe smoking a little weed here and there is beneficial for me as long as I'm moderating. Talked about that in my last podcast. Go check that out. Creativity and cannabis. Um, the one I think that the artists I know are most guilty of perpetrating, like sacrificing your health, is sleep. Sleep may be the single biggest and most impactful pillar of health that I'm discussing today. I think that a lot of artists glorify being night owls and staying up late and working long hours into the wee morning in order to finish and create. And if that's you, if that's like the best hours of your day and you're getting sleep otherwise, fair enough. Like, I'm not trying to say you need to be on a certain schedule. I myself am a morning person. I like to sleep between the hours of like 9 and 6 if I can. I am always going to try and get 8 hours of sleep. That's pretty standard, anywhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. You can sleep too much, but it's easier to sleep too little. I am somebody that has suffered from chronic insomnia my entire life. My mom said since I was a baby, I've had insomnia. I used to sleepwalk. I had night terrors. I still have crazy, crazy dreams that affect my whole day. Um, it's kind of been one of my biggest struggles as a person is my night terrors, like just like waking up in cold sweats, sleep paralysis, just like fucking demons dragging me into hell since I was a child. We don't have to talk about that. um, Maybe that has influenced me to become an artist and tap into my creativity. I'm grateful for my volatile subconscious mind because there's a light side of that as well, although there's a dark. I wouldn't take it away. But because of this, because of my struggle with sleep, I am sacred about my sleep. My bedroom is where I sleep and fuck. That's it. Period. It's where I store my clothes. It's where I sleep. It's where I make love with my fiance. And that's it. I keep my phone all the way across the room on a charger at night. And I'm religious about bedtime. I'm religious about my wake up time. I try and keep this sacred and I work around this socially. It's kind of isolating. I get made fun of a lot, like I'm an old person, because I go to bed so early. But for me, nobody has the right to my peace of mind, and that involves my sleep health. Um, so just be mindful of that as an artist. I know it's really common for artists to stay up late and want to like go on benders and it's almost like I see people like bragging about it on social media of like whether you're like getting up super early or going to bed super late because you're working on a project. It's like, what were you doing the rest of the day? Like if you're up till 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever working on your project, but you're sleeping until noon the next day or the day that day before, I'm not impressed. That's not that cool. Like it's you just like shifted your hours of wakefulness. And like if you're sacrificing your health and you're going to die early, whether you think that's glamorous or what, I don't think it's worth it. Like I think that's a silly thing to be proud of. Like I'm not telling you you need to have my schedule, But I will say that the reason that I have this sleep schedule is because it's based on circadian rhythm. I'm trying to be in tune with nature and the revolution of the earth around the sun. There is pretty convincing science that makes it more advantageous for you to be awake with the sun and sleep with the moon. It has to do with gravity, it has to do with the sun's rays and blue light that we pull in through our not only our eyes but in through the pores of our skin. And it helps to regulate our sleep cycle and the hormones that are associated with this and the cycles of those hormones. They're directly related to circadian rhythm. Look it up. I'm not lying. So I like to sleep when it's dark and be awake when it's light out. As soon as that sun comes up, if not earlier, I'm awake. I like to see the sun come up. It helps me stay regulated. And if you think that I'm being absurd and like strict about this, it's because of suffering. Suffering from any illness, whether it's insomnia, autoimmune condition, whatever, obesity. Suffering is an extremely motivating factor. Like it's very easy to follow these sleep protocols and these exercise routines and these dietary guidelines because of the suffering that I've endured. So I'm not trying to say this to shame you if you're being unhealthy. I think most people probably aren't doing the best for their health. And I'm not trying to hold you accountable. I'm not trying to make you feel bad or shame you or guilt you. Everybody's on their own journey, right? Like, I don't expect anybody to have my workout routine. There are people that have better workout routines and better diets and go more strictly. I had a Chipotle burrito yesterday. I've been on strict carnivore diet for the better part of the last 2 years. I had a burrito, a flour tortilla with white rice and beans and probably some fucking seed oils in whatever the brine they use for their barbacoa. I ate it. I had a stressful day yesterday. I wanted a fucking burrito. So I did it. It's all about moderation, folks. It's all about sustainability and balance across the board. So what else can we talk about? Social connection. That's another one. Get your sleep, folks. Sleep is important. It helps regulate all of your hormonal cycles. It helps you rest your body. It helps you digest your food better. It helps you recover from your training. You gotta have sleep. Please. The last pillar of health that I want to talk about, social connection. This is super important for artists. This is probably the worst one for me on my list is social connection. Because I'm an artist, because I'm pretty introverted, I have a tendency, like I'm sure most of you do, to isolate and to create in a vacuum. This is detrimental. We got to do our best to get connected, to stay connected, to build a network, to find our tribe, whether it's via social media, whether it's here on YouTube. Part of the reason why I'm so motivated and dedicated to putting out these videos and this podcast and my other videos is to kind of build a community so we can support each other and talk in the comments and start a thread and be in connection to just show each other that we're here, we're out here doing this thing, solidarity. You got to have social connections. I have a group of friends that I've been friends with since high school. We've been friends for over a decade, and we make it a point. We got to go get coffee once a month or something. I stopped playing video games for like 5 years when I started my business, and last year I bought a Nintendo Switch mostly so that I could get Fortnite and play with my 3 best friends. And it's been great. I now play video games with them for probably a couple hours a week, and I need that time just to shoot the shit, just to talk to people. There's something to be said about meeting in person and virtual. I think COVID showed that to all of us that I'm grateful for social connection via virtual platforms. Um, Thank God for the technology that allows that, and I hope it progresses. Um, but like meeting in person is crucial too. Try and find time to connect and be face to face and look each other in the eyes with your friends. If you don't have friends, get out there in the world. Put yourself out there. Go to meetups, go to art events, go to art shows, art festivals. Just do as much stuff as you can to get out there and put yourself out there and um, just experience other humans. Go out and meet new people. Hang out with your family. If you've got family around still, fucking call your mom. This is your reminder. Um, Social connections are critical. I don't really know the science behind it, but I think that we are social creatures despite being an introvert or an extrovert. I think it's very important to establish and maintain social connections. Don't compromise other aspects of your health in order to be social. This is something about like the diet, like especially on carnivore diet, it's really socially isolating because it's hard to order out at restaurants and um, you know, communal activities over meals are very popular. Like it's one of the things you do most commonly is to meet up and have dinner or lunch or whatever with your friends and your family on holidays. There's all this temptation of like toxic foods and sugar and all that stuff, especially around the holidays. And it's hard to avoid that. You kind of ostracize yourself a little bit, but you don't have to be outspoken about it. Just go order meat. I went to a Mexican restaurant the other day and I just ordered a la carte meat. I was just like, give me 4 ounces of steak, 4 ounces of chorizo, 4 ounces of chicken. Give it to me. It's probably not the best sourced ingredients. Maybe they fried that, maybe they grilled that chicken in seed oils. I don't know, but I was doing the best I can. I wasn't eating the chips. Um, there's a happy medium, right? And I said like the sleep thing before. Obviously, I opt out of a lot of social engagements that require me to stay up too late. I'll push the boundaries a little bit. Maybe I'll stay up till 10 or 11 for a social obligation, but I have to make up for that. I'm not getting that sleep back. Like I'm gonna have to probably take it easy the next day or rest up beforehand and plan ahead. Um, so find the balance. I'm not trying to tell you not to hang out with people if it's past your bedtime, but like suggest hanging out during the day if you're not a night person. I love coffee dates with my friends. It's one of my favorite ways to meet up with people is go out for coffee, get caffeinated and conversate, baby. It's so fun for me. I can talk for hours with people over coffee. So that is that. What else do I have to say? Just be mindful, do your own research. Please do your own research and experiment with your own body, especially with diet, especially with exercise, all these aspects. Maybe start a journaling practice and like do some way to find some way to document what you've been doing. I think creating a journal is extremely helpful to kind of audit what you're actually eating. I think people's awareness of what they're eating in a day is often inaccurate. I found this out with myself. And it's easy to get really obsessive about it. So I don't want you to like develop an eating disorder by like calorie counting and stuff like that. But it could just be a fun exercise just to like for a week, every day, after every meal, write down what you eat. Or at the end of the day, write down what you ate. I bet it's hard to even remember what you ate in that day. But do your best and just see what you've eaten and then see where you can maybe improve things you can take out, things you can add in. Um, don't trust sources on information on anything nowadays without doing your research. Follow the money, see who is benefiting from the information and the studies being produced. There are Harvard studies that have been manipulated by big industry companies that affect the data outcome and are manipulated to benefit their profits. That's a conspiracy, but it's fact. I think it was 1956. Ancel Keys did the study about cholesterol that has forever demonized cholesterol in the diet, and he basically led a study to say that that's like one of the worst things you can do for your cardiovascular health. He bastardized saturated fat, and those studies were directly funded by Procter and Gamble, which is the company that made Crisco, and margarine. These are fat alternatives. They're low fat, low cholesterol alternatives to butter, void of all the nutrients and vitamins that are in butter, and made from super processed bullshit that we were never meant to put in our body. And the American Heart Association adopted those recommendations. They also took money from these companies. I think they might have since walked back on them, but they were very quiet about those walking back of misinformation. I'm not trying to demonize these organizations. The FDA and the food pyramid, horrible, completely upside down. But just think twice. Do your own research. Experiment with your body. Make sure that you are staying informed, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. It's coming from both sides of the political aisle. It's coming from across the board. I think that media is corrupt, especially here in the U.S. With pharmaceutical companies. They lead you to believe that you should just take a pill and fix your ailments. I think there's another way around it. It seems like every network in mainstream media is sponsored by Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and all these pharmaceutical industry big wigs. So, of course, they're going to push those narratives that pad their profits. So it's just something to think about. I'm not trying to uproot your whole world and your perception of what's going on and trying to be negative Nancy. It's just these companies don't have your wellness in mind whenever they're making recommendations. They're not profiting off of people being healthy. There's an epidemic of chronic illness in this country, and you can blame it on expensive healthcare, but that's only one side of the equation. We're sick, and these industries are profiting off of us being chronically ill, not dead, but chronically ill, dependent on their medications, addicted to their highly palatable foods that are void of nutrients. Just think about it. Please protect yourself. We're entrepreneurs. We're creatives. We need to be healthy. I can't state it enough. I hate to be doom and gloom, but the relationship between physical, mental, and spiritual health is inevitable. It's crucial for your existence as an artist to stay creative, to stay productive, to be independent. Health is wealth. As entrepreneurs, we earn what we kill, right? Production does matter. It's not the only thing that matters, but production does matter. If you want to make money, you have to produce in some capacity. It's way too risky to be ill, to be sick, to miss an entire day of work because you're fatigued from hypothyroidism. That's not acceptable. It's not your fault, but you do have some control and are capable of reducing the impact that this illness has on your life, on your business, on your art. It's too risky to be ill. You can't afford it. If you take time off, you don't get paid for that time. Unless you have a W-2 job. If you're working for yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an artist, every second counts. That doesn't mean you have to produce every second, but you need to be able to produce whenever the inspiration comes, whenever the muse is ready to manifest itself through your vessel. You need to make sure that that vessel can operate properly. You can't afford to be sick. That's just my thought. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you want me to expound on any of these. God forbid you want to know more about nutrition through me. I've talked enough about that shit. But I'm happy to talk about more. Obviously, I'm passionate about it. I could have a whole YouTube channel devoted to my diet, my health regime, and maybe I will. But I've got enough on my plate now. But if you encourage me, I will certainly put forth more effort. So thank you so much for listening. It's been an hour. I appreciate your attention so much. Yeah. Thanks for watching. See you next time.